Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Facebook live chat on immigration. I'm Jeremy Love, immigration attorney and the founder of the Love Law Firm here in Hoover, Alabama on a very cloudy day. Going to do a Facebook live chat in English to start. I'll do the Spanish one at about 3:30. Me llamo Jeremy Love, abogado de inmigración aquí en Hoover, Alabama. En este momento voy a hacer una charla sobre inmigración y cómo el presidente Trump puede cambiar inmigración aquí en los Estados Unidos. Empiezo en inglés y después regreso en español en como 30 minutos. Well, again, thank you for joining me today. Wanted to let you know, again, my name is Jeremy Love, immigration attorney. I've been practicing immigration exclusively for the last 7 years, and had my own office here in Hoover for the last 5 years. And here at the Love Law Firm, we only handle immigration cases, so it's what I focus my efforts on, and we have a great team here. So if you want to check out information, feel free on Facebook, Love Law Firm, or in our website, jlovelaw.com. A lot of great information on immigration, as well as Know Your Rights information, which I'll go over as well today, that you can find there. And feel free to follow us on Facebook, and please share this video, and I'll try to continue to provide some really useful information. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about Trump going into office. Today's the 18th, so it goes into office on the 20th, which is this Friday, and what changes he could make as far as immigration goes. And I'll cover a little bit about Know Your Rights, and also answer some questions. I have already received a question or two, and I'll do my best to answer your questions live. If I'm unable to, I'll answer them afterwards. Feel free to shoot me an email at jlove@jlovelaw.com. Also on Facebook, you can send a message on Facebook, and I'll do my best to answer those as soon as possible. Well, first of all, I want to start off with letting you know that it's kind of hard to say exactly what Trump will do once he becomes president with immigration. He's made a lot of promises, and as I've said before, it's virtually impossible to do everything that he said he's going to do, and he's also contradicted himself a lot. Specifically in immigration, he said something about, he obviously mentioned building a wall that Mexico was going to pay for. Mexico says no, and so who knows what's really going to happen with that. I anticipate there will be some border security changes that will be made, but as has been said many times before, a wall on the southern border just isn't feasible. And he's also said at first he was going to deport all undocumented people in the U.S. and then said maybe 2 or 3 million. So it's kind of a lot of changes. So it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what he's going to do. So today I'll discuss a little bit about, and this will be pretty brief, but I'll discuss a little bit about what changes he could make, because I want to make sure everyone knows that immigration law can only be changed through Congress, which is a long process. And as we've seen, Congress does not move very quickly. And I don't think that immigration is going to be their top priority right now. There's the economy and healthcare that seem to be the top priorities right now for Congress. So we'll see what happens with that. But so first of all, there are some things, however, that a president can change. Those are certain rules that a president has made, often by executive action, that don't go through, kind of bypass Congress. And there's only a certain amount of things that can be done with those. So I'm going to discuss a few of those now. One of them is DACA, that's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. President Obama announced DACA in 2012 that provides protection from deportation and work permits for dreamers, people who came to the U.S. under the age of 16 and are in school or have graduated school or served honorably in the military and don't have certain criminal convictions and have been in the U.S. Since 2007. So that's a couple of requirements for DACA. Now that was something created by executive order, so that's something that Trump could cancel if he chose to do so. Now I don't know for sure if that will happen. He has mentioned it before, but if he does, my guess is what will happen with people who currently have DACA is that they'll be able to continue to work and drive with their driver's license and not fear of deportation, at least until their current DACA expires. Now, USCIS, that's U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, has done a very good job approving DACAs much more quickly over the last 2 months, since Trump was elected. But Going forward, it's hard to say exactly what will happen with those. It's really not feasible to go after someone with DACA. They're people who aren't priorities for deportation anyway. So it really wouldn't make sense. Plus, employers would hate that if they didn't have their employees to come to work who they've been relying on. And DACA has helped 800,000 people obtain work permits, in most cases driver's licenses, and live without fear of deportation. To that end, Congress there is an act currently in Congress called the Bridge Act, which has been proposed, which would protect people who currently have DACA, as well as those who have not applied yet but are eligible. It'd be something similar to DACA, where they would be able to live without fear of deportation and also have work permits. That's something that's been proposed and has been supported by both Republicans and Democrats. Because I think most people out there want to do something to help people who got to the U.S. as minors. So we'll see what happens with that, but that is a possibility going forward as well, that there are some people in Congress that are fighting for the rights of Dreamers. Another thing I want to mention is something called parole in place. Parole in place is an option for people who are immediate relatives of members of the U.S. Armed Forces. In certain cases, if someone arrived in the U.S. without a visa, generally they have to either ask for a waiver or return to the country where they were born and then apply for a waiver there, or at least go through consular processing. Well, parole in place allows for immediate relatives of U.S. People who are in the U.S. military to request parole in the U.S. without leaving. Basically, it says that you're basically given a lawful admission into the U.S. even though you didn't arrive with a visa originally. That's an option available for members of the armed forces families. That's something also that could be taken away. I would hope not, and I don't think that's a priority, because most people want to do whatever they can to help our armed forces as well as their families. So that's something to just pay attention to, as we'll see over the next coming weeks or months, what happens with that. Another one I want to mention is the Provisional Waiver. It's the I-601A waiver that went into effect in 2013. Now, if someone has an immediate relative who's a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, they can file, your U.S. citizen or permanent resident relative can file a petition for you. There are different wait periods and all that depending on the relation and if the person's a citizen or permanent resident. But generally, if you came to the U.S. without a visa, you have to request a waiver to become a permanent resident. And only your spouse or your parent who's a U.S. citizen or permanent resident can file a waiver for you. Children, for example, a child who's 21 years old, yes, they can petition for their parent who wasn't born here, but the issue is that a child who's a U.S. citizen cannot file a waiver for their parents. Complicated. And that's why if you have relatives who are U.S. citizens and permanent residents, I recommend talking to an immigration attorney about your case, because every case is different and it depends on the relation. A lot of different things can change in an immigration case. But going back to the provisional waiver, if, for example, you are married to a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and you came to the U.S. without a waiver, or without a visa, you'll need to file a waiver before you become a permanent resident. Before 2013, before March 2013, you had to file that waiver in your country of origin. So you had to leave, file a waiver, and wait 8 months or so plus for it to be approved before you come out to the U.S. And if it was denied, you were stuck abroad. Since 2013, the waiver can be filed here in the U.S. Yes, part of the process does include an interview and a medical exam in your home country. I say home country because a lot of times people lived here more than they have in their home country. But at least now you file a waiver here. So if it's denied, you can stay in the U.S. There's no risk of deportation. And also you get to wait here the whole process. You're outside the U.S. for a few weeks. Well, the provisional waiver was something that Obama enacted in 2013, and that's something that Trump could undo. Would hope not, but that's something that's we'll see what happens with that with provisional waivers. Now, a lot of these changes, for them to be done, take several months. There's a whole process for it to be done. So even if Trump announces that he's going to discontinue the provisional waiver, it's possible that it'll be another 5-6 months when people still have the ability to file provisional waivers. So that's something to pay attention to as well. That's something I have not heard mentioned, but it is a possibility. Another thing that I want to mention is temporary protected status, or TPS. TPS is specific to certain countries and it has to do with if there has been some type of natural disaster or war or some type of serious violent issue involving your home country. You may be eligible for TPS if you have been here since it was designated a TPS country. Now, right now, there aren't many countries you can file for currently that have TPS. One example is Syria, due to the civil war in Syria. But then there are also countries that have had TPS for many years. And if you arrive in the U.S. right now, you won't be eligible because you weren't here. For example, with El Salvador back in 2000 when it went into effect. But TPS is something that could be undone as well by a president, or possibly some of the older countries that have had it for a while could be discontinued. That's something we'll see what happens. But again, that's something that won't be done immediately, and you'll at least have till the expiration of your current registration. But that's something that could be, it's possible you won't be able to renew, but we'll see what happens with that as well. Another one that I've heard a lot of questions about is about deportations. Now, Trump said, as I mentioned, he's going to deport all undocumented immigrants in the U.S. He didn't use the word undocumented, but that's the word I'm going to use, which is not feasible to do. And a lot of people who are here undocumented have options to be able to file for certain types of visa or permanent residence. So people who do have those options, I recommend doing them as soon as possible. But as we saw with Obama, Obama deported more people than any other president had before. So, and he was limited in deporting people by the budget, and Congress has to pass the budget. So Trump doesn't have an unlimited amount of money to deport people. And as we've seen right now, the immigration court is very backed up. Right now they're giving, depending on the case, giving hearings out 2 years in advance. There are only a certain number of ICE agents or CBP people on the border, officers who can who do the investigations of the border. So Trump can't deport 11 million people. It's not possible. And he even backtracked on that statement and more recently said it was going to be 2 to 3 million people, focused on people who have violent criminal history. And that was something that Obama was already doing. Obama, just a couple years ago, there was the Morton memo that stated certain priorities that the U.S. government has for deporting people. And that was people who had certain violent histories, who had entered recently or had recent removal orders. And so a lot of people were talking about, the vast majority do not fall in those categories. I think Trump will do something similarly. You can't deport everybody, so you have to set certain priorities. I think it's going to be very similar. People who have certain violent criminal convictions will be subject to deportation, as well as those who have entered recently. One change that he could do is that right now, if your removal order, your deportation order, is more than 2 years old, you're not a priority, according to ICE, for deportation, if you don't have a serious criminal record. That's something that Trump could undo. People who have old deportation orders, it's possible that they'll be at risk going forward. But we'll see how that goes. And when I mean deportation order, I mean someone who had a court date in immigration court, not someone who was stopped at the border and then fingerprinted and taken back to their home country. That's not deportation, according to immigration. You had to actually have been giving a notice to appear in court. So that's an important difference as well. Again, my name is Jeremy Love, immigration attorney. If you've just joined us, thank you very much for joining this Facebook live chat. Got a couple more things I'm going to talk about, and then we'll have the chat in Spanish starting just a few minutes after this one ends. Me llamo Jeremy Love, abogado de inmigración. En este momento estoy hablando en inglés sobre los cambios que podemos ver con el presidente Trump. Voy a empezar la charla después de esta charla en inglés, en español. Gracias por acompañarnos. Okay, so mention that. I was going to mention a few know your rights, important information that going forward. It's important to know that the Constitution does not say that only people who are U.S. citizens have rights in the U.S. everyone, regardless of immigration status, has certain rights, including the right to remain silent. That's very important. If you're undocumented and police or immigration are asking you questions, you absolutely have the right to say, I want to speak to my attorney. And you have the right to an attorney, either in immigration or in a criminal proceeding. Not a government provided attorney, you have to pay for it, but you do have that right. So it's important to remember that. If you do have valid immigration documents, I would recommend keeping them with you, at least a copy with you. And also you need to provide your name and generally name and address if you're stopped on the street or in driving to an officer. But it's very important that if you're in your home, that no one has the right to enter your home without a warrant or without your permission. And so if you're home and someone knocks on your door and it's a ICE officer or it's Immigration Customs Enforcement or a police officer, you can let them know they did not have permission to enter and they have to pass a warrant underneath the door, and you can review it and make sure that it's signed. That's something that's important to do. And so that's it's important to make sure you know who you're talking to as well, but don't open the door, and definitely don't sign anything. Let them know that you want to speak to an attorney before you sign any paperwork. Okay, so we've gotten a few questions, and I'll cover those now. One person recently asked who has a U visa, and a U visa is for victims of serious crime. And it's a long process to get a U visa. You have to show that you're a person of good moral character and that you help the police in prosecuting the person responsible. But the U visa has a path of permanent residence and citizenship. Now, this person said, I have a U visa, and I have another year before I'm eligible to file for permanent residence, because with the U visa, after you've had the U visa for 3 years, you can file permanent residence. This person's only had it for 2 years, and wants to know if Trump can change that, can take away their status. And the answer is no. U visa is provided by Congress. Permanent residence, the requirements to become permanent residents also done by Congress. And so if you currently have a U visa and you are hoping to file for permanent residence, have you completed your 3 years, you still have that option. Trump can't do anything to change that. He really can't change the requirements for citizenship, for permanent residence, for certain visas, only for something created by executive action like DACA. Got another question here. Would it be pointless to try to get papers for a husband or wife? Absolutely not. If you're someone who has a path to become a permanent resident, definitely start it now. For example, if it's someone who is interested in filing for the provisional waiver that I mentioned, there's still time. Even if Trump decides to cancel a provisional waiver, it takes several months before that would go into effect. So you still have time, especially if you already have an I-130 approved, for you to go through the consular process and waiver process to become a permanent resident. So I'll definitely start it because it's definitely a possibility. And even if he does cancel it, you have time. So I would definitely continue with that process. And like I always say, make sure to get the right help in an immigration case. Make sure to hire a qualified, experienced immigration attorney. I know sometimes there are other people, notarios out there who aren't immigration attorneys, who advertise services and they charge a lot less. But usually in the long run, the help that's cheaper costs a lot more. So make sure you hire someone who's qualified and experienced in your case, and ask around, and make sure you can ask for references and things like that, and know someone who's gone through a process similar to yours with the attorney that you're looking for. Another thing I would do is make sure that if you have any outstanding criminal cases, is to continue with that. Hire an attorney who's a criminal defense attorney who can help you with that. Generally, things like speeding tickets aren't issues. Don't worry about those too much. Just pay your ticket, and you won't have to worry about and getting arrested for unpaid tickets, which would be a problem. Well, I believe that's all the questions I have for today. If you want to ask any other questions, feel free to ask them on Facebook, or if you want to, you can send me an email at jlove@jlovelaw.com. We have a lot of great information on our website at jlovelaw.com. And feel free. I try to do these chats about once a month, or as issues come up. When there is more information about what Trump plans to do, I definitely plan to have another chat. I've also spoken with ACIJ, the Alabama Coalition for Immigrant Justice, about someone joining me. Great organization, have a lot of events going on. If you want to see some of the events they have, check out acij.net or their Facebook page as well. Again, my name is Jeremy Love. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.